Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Hello.
Good evening to you. Okay, let me just try to. Okay. Let's get started. So we're starting a new chapter today. We finished 2 of them yesterday, Baruch Hashem. So we're going to Yutet, right? 19. Chapter 19. Okay, so it says, it seems to be a small one. It says in the Torah, "En chiyuv tzitzit ela betalit sherotze lilbosh." We talked about this before several times, right? That it says the obligation of tzitzit is only with a talit that he wants to wear. As we said, right? Not one that you have in the closet. We talked about that. Aval ma she'eno rotze lilbosh patur. Whatever he doesn't want to wear, it's patur. It's absolved. So it's not going on the beged. It's not going on the clothing. It's going on you. It's when you wear it. So therefore, he says this is the reason why we don't bless when we make it. Right? That Hashem commanded us to make tzitzit. Because we're not really commanded to make it. We're commanded to make it only if we wear it. Right? So when is the mitzvah? When you wear it, that's the mitzvah. Not when you make it. It's a technical point, but important to know, right? So yeah, let's go to Bet Yosef. That's the whole tour. We'll cut that one out. So it says in Bet Yosef. He starts starting on the third line. Perek Tchelet. It's over there. The Perek Tchelet. Same Gemara. Menachot. Men Bet Amud Aleph. Rab Nachman Ashkechel Rabada. Barahaba. So this rabbi found the other rabbi. The Ram Mechutet Vekam Mevarech Lasot Tzitzit. He was putting tzitzit on his beged and blessing, right? Lasot Tzitzit, this blessing, right? Which we don't bless. Amalei tells them, my tzatze shemana hachi amar tzitzit enaz b'tzicha bracha. So he says, what is this that I'm hearing that you're making a blessing like this? So he says, we heard from Rav that tzitzit doesn't require a blessing when you make it. Rashi explains tzitzi liglig, right? So it's like making fun of it. Tzitzi. What are you doing tzitzi for? You're blessing tzitzi. What? You're not supposed to bless tzitzi when you make it. You and your tzitzi. Bracha doesn't require bracha. When you make it, you don't need to make a bracha. There's no blessing when you make it. So then we say afterwards that Rav Chazda makes a contradiction, a comparison, contrast. The Rab Adarab. there's two statements of Rav which need to contradict each other. Which one is that? So it says, "Umi amar Rav tzitzit ena tzricha bracha." Did Rav really say that tzitzit doesn't require bracha? V'amar Rav, but didn't Rav say this whole discussion there? So the conclusion, it says, this is their argument. Rav Nachman and Rav Chasta, these two rabbis. They're arguing about, according to Rav, Rav Chasta Sabar, Rav Chasta holds tzitzit chovat talit, that the tzitzit is the obligation of the talit, of the beged. So therefore, when you make it, you're doing the mitzvah. According to that opinion, you have to bless on it as well. Rav Nachman Sabar, Rav Nachman holds chobat gavrahu. So it says, no, it's on the person, it's not on the beged. Right? So therefore, the mitzvah is when you wear it, as we said, right? So therefore, you don't bless when you make it. That's not the mitzvah. Says the Rif, Ve'arosh and the Rif, Yilchata Kirav. They say Allah is like Rav. The Amar Chobat Gavrahu. That what? That the obligation is on the person, not on the beged. Because we don't bless, right, this blessing, we don't bless such a thing like that. Therefore, he says, that which was said by Shmuel in Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, Kele Kufsa Chayavim B'tzitzit, right? So he said that these types of utensils, whatever, are obligated in tzitzit. It's not true. You have to see what that is, right? We'll see what that is. That's what it says in halachot. There is one that says halacha k'Shmuel, that halacha is like Shmuel. The amar chobat talit hi. The obligation is on the talit. V'anan katvinan, right? But he says we write that whatever we hold, right? Adkan. That's what he said. What about the Rambam? He paskins. She goes like the Rif and the Rosh. So they all agree basically, right? On one shita. The Chobat Gavra, so the obligation is on the man, not on the tzitzit, not on the talit. So he said, since all these three big rabbis, right, the big three, right, agree that it's ongoing on the person, the obligation, right, and so there's no doubt about that, right? There's no issue to be doubtful. What's there to be doubtful there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Let's see Shulchan Aruch. Let's see what's going on there. I think I already have it up. It's probably here somewhere. No, not this one. No, I don't think so. Okay. So there's two halachot over here. So the first one says like this: Tzitzit chobat gavrahu. Tzitzit is obligation on the person. Velo chobat mana, and not on the vessel, right? In other words, the clothing. Shekol zman she'eno lobesh talit. All the while that he doesn't wear talit, patur mitzitzit. He's patur. He's absolved from tzitzit. Therefore, he says, eno mevarech ala tzitzit. Therefore, we don't bless to make tzitzit, on the making of tzitzit. She'en mitzvah ela bilbishato. Because the mitzvah is only when you wear it. Very good. Okay, let's go to bet. Any questions from you guys?
No.
It's all pretty simple, right? Pretty straightforward. Okay, so now we'll go to bet in the tour. Okay, let's see where that is. I'm sorry, the tour I already finished. You have to go look at the Bet Yosef. Let's see the Bet Yosef. So it says Bet Yosef like this. Karsina beGemara. There's a Gemara, Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, same Gemara over there. Modeh Shemuel. That Shmuel admits beZaken she'asa letachrichin sheptura. That if it was made to be a shroud, for the dead, that's patur from tzitzit, obviously. Right? Because the guy's dead, right? He's patur from mitzvot. My Tama, what's the reason why? Asher techaseh ba. It says that you shall cover yourself with it. Amar Achamana. That's what the verse says. I said, this is not coming to cover him. Interesting.
Can you clarify what Shemuel means?
Shemuel, that's his name, Shmuel.
What is it? I'm sorry.
Like Samuel, Samuel.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Shemuel. That's his name. Like the prophet Shemuel,
Yes.
This guy wasn't the prophet. He was a rabbi and a doctor, an astronomer also. Interesting fellow. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so he says, right, that it says you cover yourself. And this is not made for covering. So what does that mean? And even though sometimes he wears it when he's alive, since it wasn't really made to cover from life, considered like a laila, the night beged. Sheptura, that's patur. Even in the daytime. Adkan, that's the end of that statement. Even according to Rambam, that he obligates every clothing with tzitzit, that he wears in the daytime, even though it's made for the night. But here's different. Why? It says on the four corners of your beged, that's talking about something which is made from men. Chai, Adam Chai, a living man. So he says, since he's dead, you don't really consider it to be clothing. In other words, the dead don't need clothing. That's the thing. So why do we? By the way, the question comes up right then. If they don't need clothing, why do we clothe them when we bury them? So the answer is when they wake up for Tchiat HaMetim, they should have something to wear. We don't want them to wake up, from the dead and be naked. This is the reason why we clothe them. Okay, very good. We talked about that before a little bit. So that's the end of that. Okay, so that's the end of the Bet Yosef. Let's go to Shulchan Aruch Bet. And we'll finish with that chapter. So it says like this. Asad talit letzorech hatachrichin. Oh, if you made a talit for shrouds, meaning, for the dead, right? Even though sometimes he wears it in his lifetime, it's patur, right? So that's why the custom is nowadays, what they do is, when the person dies and they bury him, they cut off the tzitzit and then they put it around, they bury him with the tzitzit. First they cut it off. And they bury him with the talit. He's wrapped in a talit. That's what we just saw like recently, like the last few days, right? There was this one big rabbi that passed away in Israel, So they always show his body afterwards, he's like wrapped in a talit. This is like a common thing. You see the dead rabbi, and wrapped in a talit. Right? They show that always. Well, yeah, it's kind of gruesome, but so they do. They take pictures of it. Okay. I guess it's coming.
So previously, someone asked if they buried the talit in, what did we say previously? That we don't, but it goes with a big rabbi, or?
So what we're saying is like this, right? That we first remove the tzitzit and then we bury him with it.
Okay.
That's all I remember. I don't know. Maybe you were talking about something else. I'm not really sure. If you recall, let me know what you. I don't recall exactly what else we said.
Okay. I'll check my notes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. Let's go to the next chapter, right? 20. Chaf. Let's see how big that one is. Also a small one. 2 halachot. See, it seems like we're already past like the main points of tzitzit, you know, in other words, the main course we already got through, you know. This is just a dessert over here. This is the cranberry cake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like
So the icing on top, right?
Yeah, something like that, right? Okay, so let's go to let's bring up the tour. Okay, so the tour says like this, very short. Halokeach talit mitzuyetzet. If you buy a talit which has tzitzit, Israel, from a Jew, right? Or mitagar eno yudi, or from a goy who's like a merchant, right? Kishera, it's kosher. Aval im lekacho mia eno yudi shenom tagar. If you took it from a goy who's not a merchant, pesula, it's pasul. Then mochrin talit mitzuyetzet le'eno yudi. It says you're not allowed to sell a talit with tzitzit to a goy. There's a reason for that. We're going to now get into that reason. It's something unusual, but the rabbis made a decree because of a certain thing that happened. So that's the tour. Let's go to Bet Yosef. Okay, so it says in Bet Yosef, Braita Perek Tchelet. It's a Braita in this same Perek there. Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. Uperesh Nimuk Yosef. It explains Nimuk Yosef. Mina Tagar, right? What does that mean from a merchant? Hakavua Muchzak Likach MeIsrael. That this guy is like, you know, he's a merchant that deals with Jews. He buys merchandise from Jews, you know. So what does that mean? This is like his profession, you know. He buys Judaica, whatever, you know. He's a wholesaler, whatever, or a retailer, like whatever it is. But in core, right, and then he sells it. The chazaka lo mera nafshe le'afsid sechorato v'lokeach min hamumche. Wow, look what it says, right? Why are you allowed to take from this guy? Because since he's a merchant, right, and that's his business, he's afraid to cheat, you know, because he'll get caught and he'll lose his business. So in other words, it's not that we trust him, it's because, you know, of his predicament, right? That's his business. He doesn't want to lose his profits. That's the whole thing. And by the way, this concept comes up a lot in halakha, especially in laws of kashrut, right? In many places in kashrut, we say this, you know, that the goy is afraid to lie because if he gets caught, right, he'll lose his business. Mm-hmm. This is also one of those cases. Okay, so what does that mean? That even if he sells you one without a hechsher, right, you can use it. That's the interesting thing, right?
You assume the tzitzit were spun by a Jew.
Right. In other words, we assume that it was made kosher. You know, the truth is that nowadays it's a little bit different. You know why? Because we have different levels of kashrut when it comes to talit, just like when it comes to food, right? So it depends on which level you want. But you know what it means? Like that means you could ask the goy, like, which level is this? Is it like machine made, man made? And he won't lie to you because he's a merchant. That's his business. He doesn't want to mess around with that. That's the whole thing. Okay, interesting. So goes on to say the chazakah, the Roman Neshozem, so in other words, how does the goy avoid, right, having bad merchandise? What he does is he goes to people who are expert in these things, he buys from them because he knows otherwise it's going to be a problem. People won't want to buy it. So therefore he goes to the good people, the good manufacturers, and he buys from them. Like he's just a middleman, basically, right? He's just making a buck. And that's all he cares about, really, right? Okay, so that's that. Goes on. So it doesn't mean to say, look what he says, interesting, that we're talking here about a merchant who takes from Jews and sells them. So he says the truth is that even when you have a merchant, when it comes to other types of merchandise, right, which is not like talit, something else, he's also believed there. There you go, right? That's a big thing. Because we assume that he's not going to lie because that's his business. He doesn't want to hurt his business. Because if they catch him with a lie, right, even with one lie, they're not going to believe him anymore, right? They're going to hang him, have him hanged, basically, right? They're going to crucify the guy. Mashma midivei Rashi, and that's the way it's mashma and Rashi. So Maran is coming to tell you it doesn't only apply to tzitzit; it applies also other merchandise as well. That we assume that the goy doesn't want to lie because of his livelihood. Okay, it goes on to say, Katab od Yosef, says also in Yosef, the memi she'eno tagar pisula, you're not allowed to buy from somebody who's not a merchant though, right? Just a stam goy, right? Stam goy, meets you and says, oh, I have a Jewish thing here. You want to buy this Jewish thing? This right, talus. Yeah, I found a talus. You want to buy my talus? So yeah, so we tell him, no, thanks. We'll pass up on that, right? Sorry, he's not a merchant, this guy, right? Okay, so so he says, what's the reason for that? So he says, if it's colored, we assume that he colored it. In other words, if it's tchelet, right, we assume that he dyed it, himself, which is not kosher, right? Has to be dyed by a Jew, with intention and all kinds of things. So, tchelet that was made by a goy is certainly not kosher. And if it's white strings, shemehu asa, maybe he made those strings, right? But tzitzit she'asa goy psula. And if it was made by goy, it's pasul. As we said, right, it has to be lishma, has to be for the sake of the mitzvah. V'chen katav Rabbeinu Yerucham. That's what says Rabbeinu Yerucham. About Rabbeinu Agadol Mari Avuha, right? Says this Rabbi Hiksha Alze. He had a question on this. He had a question on this. The davka gabet tchelet nachush lekala ilan. So it says regarding tchelet, I understand because there's concern that it's fake, right? Why? Because they have indigo, right? Indigo looks just like tchelet, so they can make it fake, The mishum the tchelet dama bikarim. So he says why? Because tchelet is very expensive, It's not the same price as indigo. Indigo is relatively cheap. So therefore, he says mezayef So there we're concerned he's going to cheat. Why? Because he doesn't want to pay for the tchelet. It's too expensive, So therefore he buys the cheap stuff, which is the indigo. But he says when it comes to the white tzitzit, since it's only just he's just profiting the fact that he made it himself, he saved some money there. But that's it's a small amount of money, relatively small. And also, so there we're not concerned. Ella, they say, yeah. So therefore, he's only going to do it by way of a Jew, because there's not much for him to profit there. Okay, so then he goes on. So he says, according to Sarah Balaitur, he's arguing on this, because he holds that right, according to him, the goy can make the tzitzit, no problem. It doesn't say here this should make, but he should make. Mashma the others should make. That's the end of that quote. So he says, and that which he asked regarding the white.
I'm sorry, Rabbi, what was the Yitur? He says it's a problem with
you don't need the Shema for tzitzit, according to him.
Oh, you don't need.
So therefore, Goy could do it also.
Oh, I see. Thank you, Rabbi.
It says, that which he asked regarding the white, doesn't, they don't forge that. Because it's a little bit money there, not much money. It's not the same as using indigo instead of tchelet. He sells it right as tchelet, and he gets a lot of money there. So we're talking about heavy duty profit there. So there is to say, right, there's also another reason. The effect of tchelet, the opposite of tchelet. Why? Because since it's possible to check it, we should say the lo mezayef. He's not gonna forge it. But nevertheless, we're still concerned. All the more so when it comes to making tzitzit. You can't really check it, right? In other words, how are you going to check if the tzitzit was done by a goy or a Jew? There's no way to check that. But the Gemara says also in the Gemara, lo was kiskiru tchelet. They didn't really mention the issue of tchelet there. Talit mitzuyetzet, just talit with tzitzit. Mitzuyetzet belavan nami. That also includes if it has white. The mashma the Afa Pisha Rashi, and it says even though Rashi Persha Le'inyan Tchelet, he explained that regarding Tchelet, lav le'apuke hechad dekule laman. He's not coming to exclude something which is totally white. Just taking an example, one out of the two. Now what you said that the Baal Haitur mutar likach talit mitzuyetzet belavan migoy. You're allowed to take from a goy white tzitzit. Sheno tagar, even though he's not a merchant. Because he's machshir making tzitzit with goy. And only rekla, so it doesn't seem right what he's saying. The adkan lo mechasher Baal Haitur, because the Baal Haitur was only machshir ela asyatam, only making it. That means like hanging the tzitzit and winding them, right? That he says it's possible for goy to do. Kanaf on the corner of the beged, and making the knots and the windings. About taviyat achutim. When it comes to spinning the strings, though, or shaziratan, or replating them, moded de bainon tishma. That would require rishma. Even he agrees with that. Even the Yitur. Like we wrote already in chapter 11. And goy cannot do lishma, right? He's not able to do lishma, even if he wants to. So therefore, right, it's not kosher. Okay, that's Aleph. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch. Says Shulchan Aruch like this. Halokeach talit mitzuyetzet misel. If he buys talit with tzitzit from a Jew, or mitagar eno yudi, or from a goyish, a merchant, as we said, right? Kasher, it's kosher. Kivan the tagarhu. Why is that? Because he's a merchant, right? Chazakah shelakha misel. So then we assume that he bought it from a Jew. Because he doesn't want to hurt his business. But if he buys from a goy who's not a merchant, it's pasul. So by the way, when he says over here that he bought it from a Jew, it means like a religious Jew, you know? Because if he's not religious, he's the same as a goy, basically. Has the same din as a goy. So there's a general rule like this in halakha, right? If the Jew is not religious, we see him as a goy, you know, in terms of these halachot, many of these halachot. He's not trusted, we can't trust him. He's a liar, you know, whatever, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So according to that, we would only trust him if he's a merchant, right? Then we would trust him. Because he doesn't want to hurt his business. Just like the goy.
Right.
Okay, very good. So let's go to bet. En mochrin talit mitzuyetset the goy, right? So this one says we don't sell talit which has tzitzit to a goy, right? So gam ze braita. It's also braita. Sham over there in the same Gemara, Men Gimel Amud Aleph. Ubaya the Gemara and asks over there in Gemara, my Tama, what's the reason for this, right? Why can't you sell him a talit? Maybe he likes to play with a talit. Right? What does it bother you? What's it to you? Right? So we got Hachat Targimu Mishum Zona. So there's because of Zona, right? Some kind of prostitution. We'll see what that means, right? Rav Yudah Amar Shema Itlua Imo B'derech V'Yalgenu. Right? So there's also another thing, which is that maybe Itlave Imo B'derech V'Yalgenu. That he's gonna come and join him on the way and kill the Jew. So meaning what? He's gonna dress up like a Jew and go with the Jew somewhere and kill him. Why are we concerned about this, by the way? Because one time this happened, you know, such a thing like this, that the goy, you know, wore a talit, and he went with the Jew somewhere and he murdered him. So once that happened, they made a decree, the rabbis, you know, that you shouldn't sell it to a goy. By the way, this happens also in Israel nowadays. You know, some of these terrorists, they dress up like religious Jews, you know, and then they kill Jews in order to, you know, to hide themselves, you know, to using it as a decoy. So nothing new, right? It's the same thing today. Not much has changed.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's on the previous one as we just covered.
Yes.
The point of, so we're allowed to trust a Jew with merchandise if he's a merchant, even though he's not religious, right? With talit.
Right.
I've heard with the meat you're not allowed to trust.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You're right about that, because there was decrees made on meat.
Oh, separate decrees. Because okay, I see. It's gonna hurt his business if he lies, but it's still.
That's true, but they were more machmir. They were more stringent with meat. The rabbis.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different, you know.
See.
Okay, very good. So let's go to yeah, we're reading the Bet Yosef, right? So it says here, Peresh Rashi explains this, right? Mishum Zona. What's it with the prostitute? What's the situation? Din Mahavia le Zona Israelit Usfura Israelhu. V'ibala le ve'avra mishum lo titchaten bam. Ah, wow. So it says like this, right? That it could be like you have a Jewish prostitute, okay, and she thinks that this guy who's wearing tzitzit is a Jew, and therefore they're going to have sex together, relations, right? And because of that, they're going to transgress the prohibition of not marrying goyim. Can you imagine? Right?
Double sin.
So that's the reason why. That's one reason, right? That's the first reason. But we also have the second reason as well. Okay, so then he says, right, so then we have the other thing. Lishna Charina Mishum Zona Goya. Because of the Zona Goya, what does that mean? Dilma Yahib le'au Goy Betnana. So he's saying like this, right? That maybe the Goy, this is another explanation of that reason. Of that first reason, right? Two different explanations. So what are we talking about? That maybe, right, a goy will give this talit to a zona, to a prostitute, as her wages, right, as her payment. And she's gonna say, "Oh, a Jew gave it to me," right? Atu lemichshede. So they're gonna suspect him, that he's going with prostitutes. Then he brings another reason, Shema Yitlave, right? That's the second reason now. That was only the first reason. Two reasons for the first reason. Now we have the second reason, which is Shema Yitlave, right? Israel imagoy. Maybe the Jew will go with the goy somewhere. Hazeh, right? This goy. The Savur Israel, when he thinks he's a Jew. Why? Because he's wearing a talit. And therefore he'll kill him on the way, right? Okay, very good. That's the story. That's how Rashi explains it. So he said Rambam only wrote one reason. The other reason he didn't bring. Why is that? Because it's more frequent and it's more severe. In other words, murder is more severe, right, than anything else, right? With all due respect to prostitution, it's not as severe as murder. You know what I mean? So therefore, okay. So that's the reason why Rambam only brought that reason. Then he goes on to say, Katuv b'nimuk Yosef. It says in Nimuk Yosef, the lav davka limkor ela afilu limashken. So he says, not only you're not allowed to sell to him, but even to give it to him as a collateral, for a loan, or to deposit as a deposit. But also that you're not allowed to do, or to give it to him as a gift, right? So all these things are forbidden, right? Whether it's a collateral, or it's a deposit, or it's a gift. So next time the guy invites you to his birthday party, don't bring tzitzit for him. Right? Get him some other gift. Okay, buy him some cologne or something, right? Okay, so whatever. Okay. So he says, unless what? If it's something like temporary, just like, very temporary. So then we're not concerned about that, right? It's too far-fetched. So what does that mean? If he wants to borrow it, let's say for like a day or two, whatever, maybe, so then, we're not really concerned about that. Whatever, something like that. Katav Rabbeinu Yulcham. So says Rabbeinu Yulcham, En Adam Rashai Limkor Talit Ben Suyetzer Goy. He says again, right? You're not allowed to sell a talit to a goy with tzitzit. Ela imken hitir tzitziotea, unless he removes the tzitzit. So he says, right? If you remove the tzitzit, you're okay. When you add the atal yashminan, so it seems like he's coming to teach you. Sheachar sheitir tzitziotea. Once you remove the tzitzit, mutar, it's allowed. Right? So it says, even though the holes are still there, where they put the tzitzit, we're not concerned that they're gonna make a mistake like that. And he's a Jew, right? In other words, they're not gonna think he's a Jew. He's wearing a talit without tzitzit. They're gonna think he's some weirdo or something, right? Whatever, some homeless guy, found something in the street. Right? They don't have tzitzit. Katav Rambam, says Rambam, the Perek Bet, right over there, Halacha Zayin, Hamotzet Chelet V'Shuk. So he says, right, what about if you find Chelet, right, in the streets? What's is it kosher or not kosher? Afilu Matzah Chutin Pesukim. even if he found like broken strings, and they're plated, pasula, it's pasul. Anyway, it's pasul. The Chachmei Nulil, so these rabbis, Tamhu Alav, they had a question about this, right? Because we already paskin, right, in Masechet Eruvin, Tzadik Bava Mudet, Sheimhem Mufsakim, the Shezurin, that if they're broken, they're cut, and they're plated, Sheim, they're kosher. So how did the Rambam say against the Gemara? So he says that probably what happened was that there was a mistake there with his the way he copied it over, right? Something. In other words, it was a misprint there somewhere. So basically, what he's saying is right. It's a mistake, basically. It's Rambam. So therefore, you got to fix it up. Afilu matzah chutei psukin psula shezurin kshira. If you found them that they're cut, it's pasul. But if they're also plated, it's kasher. Ve'arif ve'arosh ishmitu din zeh. So he says the Rif and the Rosh left out this din altogether. They didn't mention it. V'gam Rabbeinu lo iskiro. Also the two didn't mention it. When he read the Ta'ama, what's the reason why they didn't mention this halakha? Because they hold the betchelet the itmar. In other words, tchelet was a long time ago, right? Whatever was said was said. Aval belavan enanu. So in other words, but when it comes to white, we can't learn from tchelet the same thing. We can't learn a white from tchelet. So therefore, it doesn't apply to us today since we don't have tchelet, right? That's what he's trying to say. So it could be that the Rambam also holds this way. Because he didn't write Ken ela betchelet. He only wrote about tchelet. So what does that mean? He didn't write about white like that. Only about tchelet. And also there is possible to say the other way, that maybe he's just using the language of the Gemara, but he also meant the white as well. So there's two different ways of looking at it, right? Whatever. Okay, let's see the Shulchan Aruch, and we're done with that. Okay, so it says in the Shulchan Aruch, that en mochrin talit min tzitzit lo kochavim. You're not allowed to sell talit with tzitzit to a goy. So that means what? That if there's no tzitzit, it's allowed, right? No problem. Just only if it has tzitzit. Shema itlabe im Israel b'derech. Why? Because we're afraid he's going to go with the Jew in a way. He's going to kill him. Even to leave it as a deposit or some kind of collateral, you shouldn't do that. Unless something temporary. We're not really concerned if it's temporary, something temporary. Okay, very good. So we're finished with that perek. Now we're going to the next perek. Kaf Aleph, right? Okay. Let's see what's going on there. Okay. This one is a little bit bigger. So it says, tzitzit en bahem mishum kedusha. Right? So we mentioned this already before. We talked about it. That tzitzit doesn't have holiness, right? It's not a holy item. The tashmita mitzvah hen. So it's a mitzvah item, right? It's a mitzvah item, but not a holy item. So therefore you can throw it out. Once you're finished with it, you throw it away. That's it, right? Very simple. But the kanes bahem lebet hakiseh, Also, you can go into the bathroom with tzitzit, right? There's no problem. That's the way we go with our talit katan, right? Into the bathroom. You don't have any issues with that. It's not holy. So it says, it seems like even if when they're using it as a mitzvah, you can still use it, for mundane purposes. But it says in Sheltot, the Parshat Shelach Lecha, in this Parsha, Asur Livnei Yisrael le'me'abad tzorchehem, it says that the Jews should not do their mundane needs mitzvah. But something which is made for a mitzvah. I'm sorry, what were you saying? Something?
What was it? Beshalton? What is that?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that phrase.
It's a book. It's called Sheltot. It's a book. Yeah. It's written by one of the Gaonim.
I see.
Rabbi Achai Gaon.
Got it. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, so very, very famous book. By the way, some people say that this guy lived for like hundreds of years. Because they say that there was in the Talmud somebody who was called Rav Achai, Rav Acha. They say it's the same guy. So he lived like 400 years, this guy.
Wow.
According to some opinions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a big timer, old timer. Okay.
Rabbi, also you mentioned Talit Katan.
He's old school, Yitzhak. He's old school.
Old school, yeah.
So I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, it's just you said the Talit Katan is not holy, but also the Talit Gadol, right?
Same thing. It's all the same.
Same thing. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, God bless. So anyway, right, as we said, that it says in the Sheltot that you shouldn't use from mundane needs, right, something which is made for a mitzvah. It's not respectful, For instance, the strings you have in the talit, they mess up be midam, to pass something with that, in other words, to use it as like a handle, to pass something with it. It's not respectful to do that. Right? Oh, nami enami hoshana leoruche be, right? Or let's say you're using the lulav, right, to for some mundane purpose, whatever it means. I think it means like to like use it for decorations. I don't know. God knows what. Whatever. Or the etrog the mitzvah right. Also, the etrog of the mitzvah to eat that, right? You shouldn't eat it. When the holiday is over, you can eat it, right? As you know, right? But he's talking about during the holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, right? So it says we learn this from dam, from blood. Because the pasuk says "V'shafach the kisa." Regarding the blood, it says right, it spills out and he covers it. Whatever he spilled it, he covers it with that. So what does that mean? He shouldn't cover it with his feet. It's not respectful, right? It shouldn't be like disgraceful. Alav. So it says when it comes to mitzvah things, which are the mitzvah is already over, basically, right? As we said with the etrog, right? So then you can throw it away. That he admits, you know what I mean? Once the mitzvah is over, like etrog, adkan, right? So in other words, but if it's something which the mitzvah is not over, so what does that mean? The talit, like it's never over. I mean, you could use it for 100 years if you want. It's not a time-bound issue, so therefore, right, it's not over. So things like this, you shouldn't use them for mundane purposes.
But if you don't need it, you can throw it out.
I'm sorry?
If you're getting a new one, you just want a replacement.
Right, the truth is, we're not really talking about throwing it away. We're talking about using it for mundane purposes. It's really a different discussion a little bit.
So you can't reuse the material, for instance, right?
That means like, let's say, for instance, I'll give you an example, okay? You take your talit, right? You went to the store, right? And you're wearing the talit. After you paid shachrit, you went to the store. You went to 108 to the grocery store, and you had no bag, Now they have no bags, right? They charge you for bags. So you want to be cheap, right? So what do? You open your talit and you put the groceries in there and carry it like that, You made the talit into a bag.
Right.
That would be like a mundane purpose, you know what I mean?
Right. But
or
if let's
another
say
issue is like, to step on it, which is disrespectful, to step with your feet, to step on it,
right.
It's also disrespectful.
But
Okay,
if you're done with it, Rabbi, like you have a talit, you can either throw it out or you can let's say reuse that for something else. Just hypothetically, right?
Yeah. So
So
according to this opinion, with talit, you shouldn't use it for mundane purposes.
At all.
Yeah.
But throwing it out would be okay.
Yeah, we don't see that he's arguing about that.
I see.
Because it says in Mefurash in the Talmud like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so there's really nothing to argue about. Okay, so anyway, so it says, Maran says, really, we can argue with this a little bit and say that it doesn't resemble the issue of blood. Because when he covers it with his foot, he's doing the mitzvah, in a disrespectful way, by using his foot. But not so here, it says. One second. One second. Right, I'm sorry. So last 3 lines, right? So not so here. Rambam Zal Mutar, that the Rambam wrote he wrote Zal Mutar Lichnos Tzitzit B'Tzitzit Lebet Hillel Lebet I'm sorry. Okay, I'll read one more time. So it says Mashen Kinkan, not so here in this case. But Tov Le'Achamir, so it's good to be Machmir. So what is he telling you over here, right? I'm not reading the parentheses because you're not supposed to read that. So Maran says, right, really the halacha is not like this opinion, but good to be machmir about that. So what does that mean? Right, try not to use the tzitzit for mundane purposes or in a disrespectful way, right? As we said, by stepping on it or whatever. Okay, let's see what it says here. What it says in the Shulchan Aruch. I'm sorry, that was. So that was we just read the tour, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to do Bet Yosef. So it says in the Bet Yosef, Tzitzit en bahem mishum kedusha. There's no kedusha in tzitzit. There's no holiness there. It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah item. So it's over there in Gemara. Megillah Chaf Vav Amud Bet. Tan Rabban, it says over there in the Braita. Tashmishem mitzvah nizrakin. Any kind of mitzvah item can be thrown away. That's what it says. But when it comes to holy items, right, they need burial. That's something else. So what are like mitzvah items that don't need to be, right, can be thrown away? Sukkah, lulav, shofar, tzitzit, all these things, right? These are mitzvah items. So it implies to our rabbi, right, Rabbeinu the tour, even when they're using it as a mitzvah, even at that time we're talking about. Tanya, the nizakin, it says that they can be thrown away. But according to Sheltot Katav, the Parashat Shalach, right, Asur, it's not allowed, Libnei Israel, they're not allowed to do their mundane needs with the mitzvah items. Klomar, what does that mean? According to his words, Hadatan Rabbanan Nizakin, right? That which we learned that they're thrown away in the Gemara, that means when the mitzvah is finished, dafka. Right? For instance, the strings of tzitzit after they were what do you call it? Broken, right? Cut. The sukkah, lulav, shofar, achar she'avar azman mitzvatan. Or these things after the mitzvah, already time of the mitzvah already passed. If the time didn't pass for the mitzvah, אסור להשתמש בהם כדי שלא יהיו מצוות תזויות בעליו. You're not allowed to use them for personal needs. Right? Why? Because that cheapens the mitzvah in your eyes, you know? It makes it like disgusting, whatever, disrespectful. The alfinan, we learn this from what? Midam, from the blood, as we said, right? Because the pasuk says there, in Vaikra, it says you should, right, spill out the blood and then cover it. Whatever you spilled it with. Do it with the hand. Right? Cover it with the hand. But don't cover it with the foot. Not respectful. It shouldn't be that mitzvot disgraceful. Like it says over there in Chulin, so Rabbeinu writes, that it's possible to make a differentiation between covering the blood and getting the benefit from the mitzvah. So only when it comes to covering the blood, that the mitzvah is actually covering it. So if you do it with your foot, then it's like you're cheapening the mitzvah. But if you do it in an honorable way, the mitzvah, right? If he gets benefit from it afterwards, that's not really disrespecting the mitzvah. So his conclusion was in the Torah, good to be machmir about this, right? That was the conclusion. So meaning what? The halacha is not like that, but good to be machmir. Klamar, miderech chumra be'alma. It's a chumra, right? Obviously. So velo medina, right? So you see from here, right? Yitzchak. Tell your friend in Bet Gavriel, right, about this. When it says it's good to be machmir, that's not the halacha. Because he's making a lot of mistakes because of this. You know, because he's telling you a lot of things in the name of Rav Vadia, you know, that he said it's good to be machmir and he's making into halacha. That's a very misrepresentation, you know. You have to make sure when you read these things, you have to know what you're reading and you have to know what you're getting, you know. You got to read carefully. You have to know what you're reading, how to read.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, by the way, what I mean to say is like this, right? That when the rabbi said, Al Shalom, Maran, that it's good to be machmir with Yashan and Chadash, what he meant was if you have like a store in your neighborhood, you know what I mean, that sells Yashan, so, you know, and you have another store which sells Chadash, so go to the store which sells Yashan, you know what I mean? In other words, why would you want to be a Mikkel, you know, if you have a store right in front of you? You understand? That's what he's talking about. So in a case like that, you know, it's proper to be machmir. You know what I mean? You have two, you know, well, let's say you went to the store, right? You have two on your shelf, you know, two on the shelf. One is for sure Yashan, and the other one, it's a safek, right? So why not buy the Yashan? You know what I mean? That's what he's talking about, cases like this, you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean to say that the halacha is like that. That's already something else, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's a different story. These things, you know, these little fine nuances, the person has to understand them, you know, because otherwise it makes a whole misrepresentation of everything. Okay, so goes on to say, right? But Tamani Allah says, I'm wondering about his words. How is he arguing, you know, arguing with the sheltot, but we're just pushing it aside like that. In other words, the sheltot, as we said, right? He was one of the Geonim, you know? So what, you just like pushing out the sheltot with some svara, you know, some like something you got in your head, you know, some brainstorm. You know, it's hard to do such a thing like that. Because the Torah, you know, was like about 500 years after him, you know? So, you know, how can you argue with something like that? So it says, the there is to say, that when he gets benefit from the mitzvah, it becomes disgraceful. And since we see that the pasuk was makpid about blood, that the mitzvah should not be disgraceful on him. We learn from there, we learn from there about every kind of disgracing the mitzvah. Even something small. ועוד לפי דבריו, מאיזה טעם איסור לארוחה בהושענא? So according to him, what's the prohibition of using the lulav for oruche, right? Which means, I think, means decoration, whatever. But umechal etrog, or to eat the etrog, the mitzvah. We stapek in noya sukkah, or to use the decorations of the sukkah, kol shiva, all 7 days. Lishtamesh b'ner Chanukah, to use the ner Chanukah, the candle of Chanukah. V'share leishtamushe bechute tzitzit, and it's allowed to use the strings of tzitzit. They tama. Because if the reason if the reason is because they already became removed from the mitzvah, so it says, what about tzitzit? Right? It's not removed. So it says, therefore you must say, you have to say that which the Rabbi said, that's only when the mitzvah already passed. Also explained there around. Also Maria Abuhab, Beshem Aitur, name of the two. That's also the Rambam, Per Gimel. Shkatav says like this: let's say it got cut, right? The strings. Zorkan le'ashpa, throws in the garbage. Because there's no kedusha in the tzitzit. Mashma davka keshenifsaku. That's only when they got cut, right? But if they didn't get cut, they're not so. We say also, right, in this parak, the Tama de Asur le'atzot ma'ot keneged ner, that the reason why you're not allowed to count money next to the ner Chanukah, they shouldn't be disgraceful to the mitzvot. Kemo gabe dam, also regarding the blood, right, like that. So then the question is, what about to get benefit from the decorations of Sukkah? Kol Shiva, all 7 days. Rabbi Yosef answers, dam, says the whole lesson comes from the blood. That's the source of everything. So you see from there that getting the benefit from mitzvah until mitzvah is passed, it's considered like disgracing the mitzvah. That we learn good from the blood like the sheltot. Hilkach says, therefore, we hold this way, Medina below pikpuk klal, without any questions. Okay, let's see the Shulchan Aruch how he paskins here. I'm interested to see this. And we'll finish with that. Okay. So it says in the Shulchan Aruch like this, right? If the strings of the tzitzit got ripped, cut, right, whatever, you can throw in the garbage. Because it's a mitzvah that there's no kedusha in the body, right, of the tzitzit. If they're still in the talit, asur, you shouldn't, right, you shouldn't use them for mundane purposes. What would be an example, right? To tie something with it, to use it as like a rope, right? Right? The hand, things like this, mishum bizu mitzvah, because of this disgracing mitzvah. Okay, very good. So then it brings the other opinion, right? Some say even after they was already broken, and you shouldn't disgrace them to throw them away in a place which is disgusting, right? But they don't need gizah. They don't need to be buried. So so some are machmir to bury them. Machmir, right? Tavo alav bracha, right? You get blessed for that. That's what the Ramah says, right? So that's why a lot of the Ashkenazim, they do genizah with the tzitzit, to be machmir with this. But you know what it is? As I told you, right, the best solution is like this: to put it in a separate bag, and then put it in the garbage. Because this way it doesn't get disgraced by the garbage, because it's separate. You know what I mean? And also it goes into Gunizah because they bury the garbage. You know what I mean? So this way it comes out good.
Rabbi, but also by
The garbage gets buried anyway.
Oh, well, by this language, it seems like they're only talking about with the one that's ruined. But if it's intact, they said it's asur.
Right. So, but what is he talking about? He says, right, don't throw it into a place which is disgusting.
So
In
if
other words,
you
it's
just
not forbidden to throw it away.
Tzitzit,
It's forbidden to throw it in a way which is makes disgraces it.
I see. Even the ripped one, there's right.
So the ripped one, it says you can throw it away. Anywhere. Why is that? Because the mitzvah is over already. Like, that's it.
I see.
I mean-
I misunderstood the language.
Yeah. So the ripped one, it says you can throw it away altogether, anywhere. But the one which is not ripped, don't throw it into a place which disgraces it.
I see.
So therefore, the proper thing to do is to put it into a separate bag. This covers all the bases, right? Also, by the way, another thing, because of this halakha, that we try to avoid is like stepping on the tzitzit. When you're like walking around, don't step on the tzitzit. Because you're disgracing it like that,
Happens accidentally.
Yeah, so try to avoid that. Okay, Chazak Baruch. Thanks for coming, everybody. Laila Tov. God bless everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
See you
Thank
tomorrow,
you.
B'ezrat Hashem.
Thank you.
Hashem
Thanks
be
so
with you.
much. Good night.
Laila Tov.
Light, Rabbi.
All the best.
Thank you.